Hi everyone, welcome to Eve Math Tutoring. Today's lesson is on multiplication and division of algebraic expressions. So let's start off with some multiplication examples. Say you're asked to multiply something like the following. Multiply or simplify. So you might be given something like x over x plus 2 times x squared minus 4 over x3. So what you can do is you can start multiplying now. If you have something like this, okay, well first of all, let's just go ahead and multiply. So you multiply the things on whatever's on the top, and then you do the bottom, so x plus 2 times x3. And then at this point you want to see if you can reduce your fraction, okay? So I had done a lesson on reducing. If you want some extra practice, you can take a look at that. But right now, let's just look at this here. So what you're going to do is you're going to see if you can factor this. So you can actually factor that. That's a difference of squares. That would be factored as x minus 2x plus 2. And then x plus 2 on the bottom times x3. So this is, it's in the form a squared minus b squared. Okay, so that's why it could be factored as a minus b, a plus b. And your b squared would just be 2 in this case. So when you factor that, you then see if you can cancel anything from top and bottom. So you can cancel those, and you can cancel x with one of these, and make that becomes a 2. So it becomes x over x minus 2 over x2. Okay, so that would be your final answer, and of course you would write down that x does not equal 0, and that would be it. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Just basically multiply the top variables, the bottom variables, and then see if you can simplify by factoring anything on the top or the bottom, and then dividing out common things on the top or the bottom. Okay, so you can try a few other examples. So let's try something like we'll try one really complicated one here. X squared plus x minus 2 over x squared minus 4x plus 3 times 2x squared minus 3x minus 9 all over 2x squared plus 7x plus 6. So what we're doing is multiplying or simplifying. Okay, so what you're going to do is see what you could factor on the top or the bottom. So over here you want two numbers that add to the middle term, which in this case is 1, and multiply to this number, which is negative 2. So two numbers that add to 1 and multiply to negative 2 are the numbers 2 and negative 1. So those multiply to negative 2 and add to 1. So you're going to do x plus 2x, sorry, that's going to be x plus 1 and x minus 2. X minus 2. So x minus 2 and then x plus 1. Oh no, sorry, it is negative 1 and positive 2. Those were the numbers we got. So x plus 2 and x minus 1. Like this. There we go. Okay, and then the bottom can be we want two numbers that add to, this is not working. Over here we want two numbers that add to negative 4 and multiply to positive 3. Okay, so those two numbers would be two numbers that add to -4 multiplied to +3 would be -3 and -1. So we go ahead and put those in. So we just factored the top and the bottom of this one. And then we're going to factor these ones here. And the reason we're doing this is to see if we can cancel stuff out from the top and the bottom, because over here you cannot tell. So over here, now we've got two trinomials where you've got a number in front of the x term. So as you remember, I factored those a little bit differently in my previous videos. So I'll just show you again. So if you're factoring something like this, you want two numbers for this one here. You want two numbers that add to -3 and multiply to 2 times -9, which is -18. So two numbers that add to 3 multiplied to -18 would be -6 and +3. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to replace the middle terms with those two. So instead of -3x, you're going to have -6x plus 3x. So once you replace the middle with those, now you can do the bottom part here. So for the bottom part, we've got so we want two numbers that add to 7 and multiply to 2 times 6, which is 12. Okay. So two numbers that add 7 and multiply to 12 are the numbers 3 and 4. So 2x squared plus 4x plus 3x plus 6. That's what we replace 7x by. Okay. So now we would get x plus 2, x minus 1, all over x minus 3, x minus 1 times. So this would become, so now what you do is you check what you can factor out common from the first two. So that would be 2x, and you'd be left with x minus 3. And over here you could factor out a 3, you'd be left with x minus 3. Over here you could factor out a 2x, and you'd be left with x plus 2. And over here you would factor out a 3, and you'd be left with x plus 2 again. Okay? So now you'd have x plus 2, x minus 1, all over x minus 3, x minus 1, times, we could factor out an x minus 3 here, and we'd be left with 2x plus 3. Over here we could factor out an x plus 2, and we'd be left with 2x plus 3. Okay? So now at that point, now this is a little bit too close, but as you can see, this is separate from the top. At this point, you want to see what you can cancel out. That's common. And actually, you can cancel that with that with that. These two cancel, and these two cancel. So your final answer ends up being 1. Okay, so I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell that by looking at this unless you factored it. And once you factor them correctly, you're going to see that when you do start canceling stuff out, you end up with a 1 as your answer. Okay, so that's an interesting one. This is the great thing about math. It's so interesting, and you never know. I mean, there's just, you know, I mean, who would have thought that this would have given you the answer of 1, right? So that's that one. Now we're going to do a few division examples. So if you're doing division, so say you want to simplify or divide the following. X plus 2 over y minus 1. So the question could say simplify or divide. Excuse me. Okay, now over here, you can write it as x over y. What you're going to do is change this to multiplication and flip the second fraction. Okay, so when you do that, when you change this to multiplication and flip the second fraction, as you can see, you get something like this here. And that's what you would do normally in fractions. And then at that point, you're just done. So it's just y times x plus 2. That would be it. Okay, so y does not equal 0, x does not equal -2, kind of thing. Maybe we could try another example. So if we have x squared plus x minus 2 over x divided by x plus 2 over x squared, so that would be, this would factor to, two numbers that add to 1 and multiply to negative 2 would be positive 2 and negative 1. So x plus 2, x minus 1. Okay. Those two numbers, positive 2 and negative 1, would add, multiply to negative 2 and add to positive 1 over x. This becomes division and you flip the second fraction. So this cancels this, and then this cancels that, so you end up with x minus 1 times x. Okay? So that would be the final answer for that one. So I changed this to multiplication and flipped the second fraction, but I also factored the one on the left to see if there's anything that, you know, I can cancel from the top and the bottom, and there is, and I get my final answer here. Okay, I'm going to show you one more example of division, because there's so many different examples that you could be presented with, and that's why it's important to do a lot of practice, and I find that that's the best way to understand math, is to do a lot of different questions. Okay, so over here you're going to simplify. The question could say simplify or divide. So when it's division, this here, if there's nothing written on the bottom, it's actually over 1, and then you change this to multiplication and you flip the second bracket. So you change that to multiplication and flip the second bracket, and then what happens is this cancels this, so you get 4 over pi r squared as your final answer. Okay, so that would be it. So like I said, there's a lot of different examples, pretty much the same rules except fractions, except that you have to factor the tops and the bottoms of your algebraic fractions, and I have other videos on how to factor trinomials and how to factor by grouping and etc. So you can take a look at those as well, or factoring, you know, the difference of cubes or the sum of cubes, or the difference of squares or the sum of squares. So if you want, you can take a look at those videos to see all those rules. Once you have those down, you should be able to simplify any algebraic fraction. So you should be able to multiply or divide from there. Okay, so I hope that helps you understand.